Hello there. Welcome to Gunner Short once again. Today we're going to take another look into China. And this peek into everyday China is about the ghost cities and the sick property sector of China. We're going to see some of the ghosts in the Chinese property sector. Right. Uh, why Chinese property sector? Why is it? We must understand that the Chinese property sector constitutes nearly one fourth of its economy, right? And this is in distress. And it's been in distress for over a year now, ever since the Evergrande crisis broke out. Along with this, Xi Jinping had tightened the screws on the tech sector, educational tech, fintech, and even retail tech, and raid hailing cabs, and Alibaba, and Tencent, and all of them, right? They've been pruned. So 15 that was 15% of the GDP. So 15% of the tech sector and 25% of the property sector both are in serious trouble. And if these two are in serious trouble, where is the where is China's GDP heading? And in case someone talks of the revival of the Chinese GDP, look at this sector. If this sector revives, then there is hope. Otherwise, Chinese GDP and growth is going to be stagnant. So let's understand this in a little more detail. Very clearly, construction, finance, property market, everything put together is about quarter of the Chinese GDP. Right. This is an article which came up about, say, 2 days back, right? Which said why housing in China is unaffordable, right? And why China's attempt to fix this whole problem is running into issues. Not able to, in fact, they have failed as per this article. It's quite interesting when you hear that. Okay, just have a look at the home price to income ratio in major Chinese cities and US cities. The bottom three are of US, that is San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. What do they indicate generally? You can buy a house at 10 times your annual income, that is 10 years of your salary. Look at China. The figure is anything between 25 to 40. That means you have to put in 40 years of your salary to get a house in China, or 25 years. And if you start that process at about 40, you're well over 65 by the time you own a house, really. Otherwise, you're in mortgage. Okay. But the funny thing is, why people invest in property? They hope that the value of the property goes up, they make money, they can sell tomorrow and create a nest egg. So people in China have one or two, three flats. They stay in one and hope like hell, sell the other two or three at profit. But the problem is everyone thinks so like that. But from the past 2 years, the property prices have crashed. They are now in the negative range. That's for new houses and second hand houses too, across the board. So this is what this graph tells you. Now, this report of South China Morning Post says real estate accounts for one quarter of the domestic output, which I had said GDP, and it is 80% of any household asset. Okay, now there are about 1 lakh companies which operate in this sector, and they provide 27 million jobs. It's this nation's second largest employer. In the past 1 year, headcount or the salary is reduced by 15%. And that too only in the 28 publicly listed developers. The others, God knows. And those who are employed face steep pay cuts and usually up to 30 to 50%. This is damaging. This sector is shrinking. Sales of houses, and we'll look at a few other issues, and everything comes into perspective. Right. What is this story all about? Housing has been a boom in China, and there are four players involved in this. First is the buyer, second is the developer, the third is the bank, and fourth is the local government. Local government. Okay. The funny thing in China is that the property is transacted on a pre-sale model. What is it? If I want a house, I go pay the developer full amount. He takes the full amount from me and sells me a house which doesn't exist. Now, to pay him upfront full, I have to put some FD or something in a bank. And against that FD, I take a loan, and that loan is what I give to the developer. And then, irrespective of whether I get a flat in hand or not, I start repaying the bank mortgages every month. So, what does the developer do? He takes my money, then he gets others to invest in it. He gets the banks to invest in it. You invested in the bank invests back in the developer. So it's round tripped. Then he gets other angel investors to invest. He collects a whole lot of money. He starts building the project, and then he starts another project. So it becomes a Ponzi scheme. And as he grows big, he invests in other activities. For example, the Evergrande guy, he had a football club for which he spent lavishly. Okay, where do the local governments come in this? The local governments promote the developer. Why? Because if the developer develops in their area, they can sell land, and land constitutes 30 to 50% of their revenue. It's a happy circle. Or because of that fellow being propped up now by the government, so he gets a highway for everything, to whatever he wants to do. And plus, there's an ancillary industry which is growing: cement, steel, fitment, sofas, furniture, luxury items. फ्लैट मिल गया तो luxury item चाहिए. So it's a jamboree. Now the GDP grows beautifully till such time the Ponzi scheme collapses. The developer has overstretched himself. He can't pay back loans, and the whole thing comes down. And that's what has happened in China. We all heard of this rise and fall of the Evergrande group. It's not only Evergrande group. Every group there is in this kind of a thing. Kaisa, Fantasia. I'm hearing new things which I never knew existed also. Okay. All these guys are still in pain. Now, the funny thing which happened in August was that these guys who put their money in the banks, because the developer couldn't repay the banks couldn't repay FDs which were maturing. So all the people went and did a pradarshan. This was in Henan, but within a matter of about 10-15 days, it metastated to every other city, and many places people were on the streets. So what did the Chinese government do? They muzzled everything to the extent they even sent tanks. This is the one in Henan. And this was just before the 20th Party Congress. So no mercy. But people were told, okay, you don't have to pay mortgages. Some deal was given, and that was the end of the story. But people are still in pain. Their mortgages are still outstanding, loans are still outstanding, flats have not been given, and the developer doesn't have money to build the flat. So what happened then? Then the government put something together and said, okay, let's revive this sector, because this sector is too big for China to fall. That's the beauty. Now, let's look at it a little closer. because you get the detail. China's new home prices see sharpest decline in 7 years in October as property sector woes persist. This was reported in November. Okay, okay, falling, and the decline was sharper in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Till then, the fall was only in major cities. Now it has started by October, November. The contagion had gone to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. When all this was happening, Xi Jinping ji was getting elected as the strongman of China, or rather appointing himself. Then Shanghai housing market collapsed, and something interesting happened. All those people who had money decamped, were transferring money out of China. It started then buying houses in Singapore, Malaysia, and any other place they could go, even USA. When I was in USA around, say, a month back, I did hear of people, you know, saying that, look, the Chinese come with bag full of cash and buy houses. So that's a different story. I'll talk about that later because that flow affects the political strength and the political economy of China. But that's for a later day. Today we'll concentrate only on property. Okay. Then the local government, they didn't know what to do. They started doing land grab to sell it more to uh, developers because they have no sources of income, and they were under tremendous stress because of the zero COVID, where they had to spend a whole lot of money on testing and all that nonsense which went on. Testing, tracing, daily morning and evening, and they paid for vaccines which were useless. They were all this payment was offloaded to the local governments, who are today in great distress. Okay, okay, wait. Yeah, in December, the home prices fell faster. By December, for 6 months, the prices of property kept going down and down and down. And that is what the first slide I had shown. What the slide I had shown in the first is being substantiated every month by reports coming out of China, if you track it. Okay, this is just one thing. One property guy, he even gave 36% discount on his flats. They were known to buy. No one was interested in buying. Okay, he auctioned, did everything, but that was the end of the story. Okay, now let's look at this closer. One Chinese bond developer, he missed this payment. Then that was when actually the government really started no, stepping in. So the question which South China Morning Post asks is too little, too late. Even as the state dives in to save the ailing property sector. Okay, companies have started defaulting. This is one company, Times China Holdings, but there are more who have defaulted. None the details don't come out very easily to all of us. Okay, then suddenly when the government stepped in, there was a rally. But the reality is this: Chinese property stocks rally may soon run out of steam as home sales slump outweighs financing boost. Okay, the next line is interesting. Contracted sales at Chinese property developers will drop by 20% this year. More. So that's more pain. Okay. So overall, if you see, China is stuck with its property. Right. Or Alibaba, Tencent, they, you know, started firing people, dehiring people, downsizing everything. That resulted in the property bubble bursting because people couldn't pay, right? And then the prices plunged. This is the real status of China. When we talk of China, we should understand. We just hear कि भाई China property में problem हो रहा है, but this is the real thing. Okay. And why is it the real thing? It is coming from South China Morning Post. The Global Times and Xinhua and all will not give all this out. Top 100 Chinese developers saw sales plunge 40% in 2022 as property crisis deepened. Top 100. Okay. It is now the survival of the fittest. Now that's huge. If 30% of your economy, which is your driver of your economy, investment, property, real estate, big tech, put together is 60% of Chinese economy. If that 30 to 40% of your economy is sick, how can you grow? There is something which we have to understand. Fundamental economics, if you understand, you will see that China can't grow. That's why I come out with these details. Now, the government has drafted a 21-point plan to aid developers with financing, debt extension, and all that. That's what has been reported. And when was this reported? Mid Jan. So logically, if the government steps in, and the way Chinese government side steps in, it pumps up the whole system. We all think, oh, they'll subsidize everything. China will pull a rabbit out of the hat and all that. In this case, I'm afraid China itself is the rabbit out of the hat. Right? So around the same time, this such an article also comes out. Is that bubble about to burst? And what is driving the crisis amongst local governments? The outlook for Chinese local governments' debt in 2023 is gloomy, triggering concerns over rising default risks. So the local governments are going to default. That means state governments, like say Tamil Nadu government or Orissa government or Punjab government, are going to default. And these fellows have been doing their own deals without telling everyone. That is why Beijing has stepped up supervision of off-balance sheet borrowing and is promoting fiscal and loan restructuring. So it is not at the top; it is at the bottom. The bottom is shaky today. I mean, something which we don't understand unless you see these articles. They'll come once in 2 3 days. One article comes in one corner, so I just store it away. And after some time, when something logical comes out of the whole story, I put it together and I get back to you. Till some time back, it was through gunnershot.com. I used to the peak of everyday China. Hereafter, it's going to be, uh, you know, on a video. Okay, what is this? Is latest. Few days back, right? I'll give you a close up so that you understand what date. You're talking of 27 January. 10 दिन पहले. Young Chinese say real estate isn't the nest egg was all. It was once all. It's all cracked up to be. Now, Chinese older generation invested considerable savings in property, buying up homes and flats. That would hopefully appreciate over the years, but times are changing. In fact, the times have changed so much that they've lost money. And when the old people lose money and their old life savings are losing, then there's a problem. Aging China, no consumerism. Unless China shifts to a consumer economy, it can't surface. So the problems galore, right? Chinese leaders still consider real estate to be a pillar of the nation's economy, but investor confidence appeared to be waning, especially the Gen Z, young people. They don't believe in this. The Chinese bonds are in pain, property is in pain, tech sector is in pain. Young people don't believe in their own system. Where is China heading? I'm only parroting what these fellows have written about themselves. And if you see the authors, They're Chinese, right? Chinese home buyers have become cautious and look to Japan's experience, right? So property is becoming a negative value in China slowly. All efforts to stimulate demand is not coming out. Why? Jobs are lost, decoupling is taking place, more job loss, less pay, less disposable income, and what they have served saved in flats has gone down in value. That's why they don't want to have children also. So everything is interconnected. People say China won't collapse. Yeah, China won't collapse, but China won't rise either. I think if you look at the whole thing, property, tech, uh, population, decoupling, the days of China's rise are gone. Painful as it is, China must rid its economy of an ever-raising property market. Well, this article I would recommend anyone who's interested in really understanding the whole story of China, read it. It is by a person called Michael Pettis. Michael Pettis is a professor in Tsinghua University, and he writes for Carnegie and this and that and international bodies. If you look at his articles within China, they're a little soft. Outside China, when he publishes his articles, they're pretty strong. And in this article, which he has written, it is pretty strong. What does he say in this article? Let me show it fully. He says China experienced one of the largest and most sustained surges in property in history, property prices in history. Households, businesses, banks, and government entities became extraordinarily dependent on the property sector. They rode on the property sector. The longer this process continued, the more urgent it became to rein in the sector because it was going out of control. The Ponzi scheme was becoming bigger and bigger. Now, here comes the thing. The longer this continued, the more painful it would be to inevitably be to reverse it. You can't. They're not able to do it. When much of the economy is explicitly or implicitly betting on an expansion in the property sector, because everyone wants property to go up and make money. Therefore, it cannot come as a surprise. Then any reversal of this expansion will create significant financial distress, right? People will collapse. On the other hand, China cannot allow the property sector to expand or even stabilize at current overextended levels. As per this article, he says, even at this point of time, the Chinese home prices, though they have fallen, are still the costliest in the world. Okay. Now, if China pulls back the whole thing, the valuations fall, the whole thing crashes, people lose money. Is it politically feasible? No. If they let it go, and if China doesn't have any oversight on the property sector, then there's a collapse. So China is in the horns of a dilemma with its property. This article came a month or two back, but I've shown you those clippings which are recent, and China has not come to grips with it, right? And that is why today I've taken this up. I've taken this subject up. Please understand, the property sector in China is in trouble. One, it's not going to come out easily. It might take a year, two, three for it to stabilize. One. Second, the population is declining. Third, decoupling is taking place. Fourth, job losses are happening. Put all these together, factories are closing up, right? Everyone is trying to limit their exposure to China. They'll not do away with China. No. If a chap was doing 100 transactions per day, he'll probably bring it down to what 80. If that 20% goes out of the Chinese economy, where will Chinese economy be there? You think it's not the reality? Almost 50% of Apple production is out. It's in India today. So when you look at the whole thing, the property sector is the pulse which will indicate to you which way China is heading. Will China be able to restructure its economy and get out of this property problem? Is a thing we'll see down the line. Till then, take care. Don't get into a ghost city. Let lest the Chinese ghosts come and bite you. Jai Hind and goodbye.